Still wasting money on that startup, Dad sighed. The financial advisor gasped at my screen. 15.5 billion net worth. Trust became a relative term. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? The one who's always on the fringes? Let me know your story down in the comments. I'd love to know who's part of this community. The boardroom was cold. Not a normal cold. It was the sterile HT deliberate chill of the 80th floor of the Hale & Company Holdings Tower, all glass and steel, overlooking a city that seemed miles beneath us. An abstraction. I sat at the far end of the long frumsidon. Black marble table. As usual. The seat was symbolic. It was the punctuation mark at the end of their very important sentence. Mr. Graves, our family's lawyer for decades, a man who smelled of old paper and older money, cleared his throat. The sound was like dust falling. We'll begin. He announced to the room, the annual Legacy and Capital Review. My father, Robert, spoke first. He always spoke first. He sat at the head of the table. The patriarch, obsessed with the tangible legacy of his manufacturing empire. His gaze found me, and I could feel the familiar weight of his disappointment. Before we review the real assets, he said, his voice heavy, let's address Maya's situation. My sister, Chloe, gave a perfectly practiced, sympathetic little laugh. She was the legacy, the high-achieving VP, the one who lived up to the name. Dad, be nice, she said, though her eyes were anything but. Her art projects are important to her. She tapped a glossy prospectus in front of her. Unlike my new real estate data project, which, as you all know, is already valued at $40 million. Some things are just for self-expression. Self-expression isn't a portfolio strategy. Chloe, my Uncle David, chimed in from her right. He was the money man, the smug, old guard wealth manager who ran the family's flagship bond fund. It's a liability. They all nodded. The unified front. I just watched them. I said nothing. For years, I had felt like a guest in my own family. A ghost at the table. A curiosity they had to tolerate. They talked about my work, my research into neural interfaces and quantum data like it was a quaint, childish hobby. Like I was in the garage, building a model volcano. As they continued to talk at me, about me, I looked out the window at the distant blur of the city, and I thought, this letter is for all of you who are on the fringes, for all of you who have ever felt like you were on the outside, a guest in your own life. That feeling of not belonging, it isn't a weakness. It's an observation post. You see things they can't. You see the cracks in the foundation they're all standing on. You see the ice floating in their voices. You see the difference between what they say and what they mean, and you learn to build your own shelter. My silence wasn't weakness. It was data collection. Uncle David leaned forward, his gold cufflinks catching the cold overhead light. He loved to lecture. Maya, he said, his voice dripping with paternalistic condescension. A neural interface is science fiction. Quantum data is a buzzword people use in articles you read online. It's not real. He patted the solid marble of the table. Real wealth, legacy wealth, is built on tangible assets, manufacturing, bonds, things you can touch. Your father's company, my flagship fund. These are proven strategies. I just watched him as he spoke, and I finally, truly understood he wasn't just arrogant. He was a prisoner, My internal monologue was sharp and clear. He's a victim of the anchor bias. He's so anchored to his blue-chip past, the world he grew up in, that he's completely blind to the fact that the world has already left him behind. He's celebrating a sunk cost fallacy, pouring good money after bad into his failing bond fund simply because he can't admit he was wrong. His tradition wasn't a strategy. It was a cognitive prison. And he was inviting me in. I gave a small, polite nod. I'll take your advice under consideration. Uncle. My father sighed. A sound of pure, unadulterated disappointment. It's beyond that. Maya. All eyes turned to Mr. H. Previn. Graves. He shuffled his papers. His face, a legal mask. Completely unreadable. Maya, he said, his voice flat. Given your time, reclusive lifestyle, and these consistently unstable financial reports from your ventures. He was choosing his words very carefully. Your father and uncle are formally petitioning to invoke Article 7, Section 4 of the Trust. My blood went cold. I knew exactly what that was. The competency clause, I said. My voice didn't even waver. Correct. Graves said, not looking at me. They believe, and the Trust's bylaws support this, that your portfolio, and by extension, your entire trust, would be better managed by a more stable and experienced hand. He gestured with his pen toward my uncle, specifically, by Mr. David. The room was silent. This was it. The breaking point. I looked at their faces. My father, unable to meet my gaze. My sister, Chloe, watching with a small, victorious smirk. My uncle, looking like a man who had just done something very, very reasonable. This wasn't just condescension anymore. This wasn't just a family argument. This was a declaration of war. They didn't just think I was a failure. They were using their power, their lawyers, and their tradition to legally certify me as one. They were trying to take it all. The room was quiet, but it was a loud silence. It was the sound of victory, the sound of my family members settling back in their chairs. A nasty piece of business now concluded. They were all looking at me, waiting. I think they were expecting. What tears a desperate, childish argument. Maybe they hoped I'd beg. My father looked away. A mask of tough love disappointment. Chloe had a tiny, barely there smile. The kind you wear when you've just proven a rival is exactly as pathetic as you always said they were. Uncle David just looked smug. As if he was already calculating the fees he'd make managing my assets. I didn't give them any of it. I just held their gaze, one by one. Then, I looked down at my phone. Aha. I'm sure they thought, she's retreating, texting a friend, running to her little support group, defeated. They didn't see the screen. It wasn't a text. It wasn't my email. It was a custom-built, quantum-encrypted dashboard that didn't technically exist on any public server. The interface was minimalist, elegant, and black. At the top, a single, glowing gold icon, Athel. My company, my real work. In the corner of the screen, a small, persistent timer was counting down. Below it, a series of protocols were listed, status updates for an operation I'd spent 5 years building. An operation that was timed to the microsecond, to this exact day and this exact meeting. My father's voice broke the silence. Impatient. Maya, this is for your own good. You'll thank us one day, Mr. Graves. Let's just call the vote so we can move on. Go ahead, I said, my voice quiet, my eyes still on my phone. My internal monologue was cold and clear. They thought this was a meeting to decide my future. They didn't realize it was a countdown to the end of theirs. They were voting on a world that was about to become extinct. I watched a single line of data flash across my screen. A waterfall of sell orders, triggered by an algorithm my quantum data hobby had designed, was just beginning to hit the market. It's done, I whispered. Not to them, to myself. The Ethel protocol was active. The surgical takedown had begun. As Mr. Graves was reading the dry alamaya, legal boilerplate for the competency vote, something about fiduciary duty, and the preservation of assets, a sharp buzz cut through the room. It was Uncle David's phone, placed face up on the marble. He glanced at it, annoyed by the interruption. Then his face froze. He didn't pick it up. He just stared at the preview on his screen. His knuckles, resting on the table, went white. What is? He whispered. He fumbled to unlock the phone, his fingers suddenly clumsy. No, that's not possible. That's a... He was typing frantically, his breath catching in his chest. My fund. There's a mass liquidation. It's a buzz. This time, it was Chloe's phone. She snatched it up, a look of pure irritation on her face, as if annoyed that her perfect $40 million project was being interrupted. She read the email. Her perfectly composed mask cracked. My investors, she said, her voice rising, losing its polished edge. They're pulling out, all of them, right now. She looked at her father, her eyes wide with panic. They're citing a catastrophic failure in data integrity. They're saying the data is unsound. What does that even mean? She was on her feet now. Dad, tell them. Your name is on the company. Call them. Before my father, Robert, could even speak, his phone rang. Not a buzz. A ring. A line reserved for his chief financial officer and no one else. He took the call, his face still a mask of patriarchal authority. What is it? I'm in a meeting. There was a pause. I watched his face. It didn't just go pale. It caved in. The color drained. His eyes hollowed. His mouth went slack. He clutched the edge of the marble table. What do you mean? An anonymous fund, he said. His voice a strained whisper. Initiating a hostile takeover, now what? What collateral call? A longer pause. He was just listening, his body rigid. Liquidate how much of our stock, he finally choked out. That's God? No. That's everything. The room was in total, abject chaos. David was muttering about bankruptcy, his head in his hands. Chloe was in tears, her makeup running, screaming about sabotage. My father was just gone, staring blankly at the wall, the phone having slipped from his hand onto the carpet. And for the first time, in their moment of complete and total freefall, all three of them looked at me, still sitting at the end of the table, still silent, still watching. Mr. Graves was the only one still trying to cling to the old reality. He was a man of paper, of rules, and the rules said it was time to vote. He was shuffling papers, his hands visibly shaking now. This is all just noise. We have a motion on the table. He looked at his own laptop, his face twisting in frustration. Maya, he said, his voice sharp. Angry. I can't seem to access your portfolio to transfer the assets. It's encrypted. He said the word like it was a personal insult. My voice, calm and clear, cut through their panic. It was. I looked down at my phone one last time. I tapped the screen. The main boardroom screens, which had been showing the chaotic, nosediving stock ticker of Hale and Company, flickered. They went black. And then they lit up with the clean eyebrows car. Elegant. Black and gold interface of the Ethel dashboard. At the very top, a single number. Updating in real time. Mr. Graves squinted. He leaned in, adjusting his glasses. His jaw slack. He gasped. It wasn't a word. Just a sharp intake of air. My God. Net worth. $15.5 billion. My father, who had been leaning on the table, dropped the phone he'd just picked up. It clattered to the marble floor, and no one moved. He just stared. Broken. I looked at him. My voice still key-it. Still wasting money on that startup. Dad. And as if on cue, because it was on cue. All part of the reveal protocol, the breaking news banners, which had been covering the financial channels, finally populated the main screens. World's first quantum AFL goes public. $2.5 trillion market cap. Unknown founder M.H. becomes richest person in modern history. Markets in turmoil as Ethel AI restructures global finance. The room was dead silent. I could hear Uncle David's ragged breathing. Chloe was the one who pieced it together first. Her voice a raw, cracked whisper. M.H. Maya. Maya Hale. Her eyes, red from crying, locked on mine. The horror, the comprehension, it was absolute. Oh my God. You're Ethel. I stood up. My chair made a soft scraping sound. And it was the loudest thing in that tomb of a room. All eyes, all three broken sets of eyes, snapped to me. Those investors, I said, my voice calm and clear. I looked right at Chloe. Her face was a shocking mess of ruined makeup and pure eyes. Uncomprehending disbelief. The ones who pulled out of your $40 million project, they were my shell companies. The data wasn't unsound. Chloe, it was just my data. She just crumpled, folding in on herself. No sound came out. I turned my gaze to my uncle. He was still staring at the table, his skin gray, muttering about bankruptcy. The mass liquidation that just bankrupted your proven fund. Uncle David, the one you were so eager to manage for me, that was my AI testing its new market stresses algorithm. You were the test. He made a small, choking sound and looked like he was going to be physically sick. And then, my father, Robert, he was just staring at the glowing AETL logo on the main screen. His face completely blank, empty. And the anonymous fund initiating a hostile takeover of your company. Dad, the tangible legacy you were so proud of. He finally, slowly, turned his head to look at me. His eyes were hollow. That, I said, is Ethel. The art project you wanted me to abandon. The hobby you just tried to take from me? They were silent. The silence of extinction. The silence of a world that has just ended and a new one they don't understand has just begun. I walked to the door, my footsteps echoing on the marble floor, my hand on the cold steel handle. You tried to take my trust, I said, not turning around. But you don't understand. The trust was seed money. It was a test. A very, very small one. I looked back at the ruins of my family, sitting around the table of their fallen empire. I'm not here to take Hale and Company. I'm here to liquidate it. This is the justice of the sower. I'm not here to salt the earth. I'm here to plant something new. I am dissolving this entire legacy you were all clinging to fund the Ethel Foundation, an open-source quantum data network, free for everyone. I'm building the world you were all too blind, too anchored, to ever see. I paused, and my eyes found Mr. Graves, who was frozen in place. You can cancel the vote. I looked at my father one last time. Trust became a relative term. I walked out. Sometimes, the only way to win is to build a new game. Have you ever had to prove your worth to people who refused to see it? Have you ever had to walk away to find yourself? Share your story in the comments. Your strength is valid, and your story matters. Don't forget to follow for more.